This is All India Radio. Radioscope, the National Science Magazine program.
Hi, good evening and welcome to this edition of Radioscope. In this episode, we feature Dr.B.T. Rudresh, Dr.Pallavi Wajapey and Dr.Sharada Srinivasan. Stay with us. According to a US study published in JAMA Pediatrics, frequent use of digital pacifiers to calm upset children can hinder the child's ability to regulate emotions properly. The researchers studied 422 parents and 422 children aged between 3 and 5 years. Those who were frequently given devices to calm down were more likely to show signs of emotional reactivity. The study determined that using a distractor doesn't teach a skill. The study further observed that kids who don't build those skills early in childhood are more likely to struggle when stressed out in school or with peers as they get older. Dr. Belawadi Tippaswamy Rudresh is a classical practitioner of homeopathy. He has completed 3 decades of committed service towards his profession. It may be said that his contribution to homeopathy system of medicine in Karnataka has catalyzed the metamorphosis of homeopathy towards acceptance as a scientific system of curing.
April 10th has been considered as World Homeopathy Day all over the world. In the name of the founder, Christian Frederick Samuel Hahnemann. He was born in April 10th on 1755 in a small town called as Meissen, Saxony in West Germany. What so-called allopathy today, which is known as modern medicine, allopathy, a name given by homeopathic founder Hahnemann himself. So he found that system which he was practicing had no basic law. If you call as a science, every science must have got a basic law. There is nothing like a basic law which was treating. You used to give one medicine to one disease, it would go, next day it would come again. Like this it went on. There was no unending process of not becoming better. He was fed up, he gave up his practice. Well, practice, though he has to live. He was knowing 12 languages. When he was translating Cullen's Materia Medica, one sentence which really draws his attention was, the bitterness of the cinchona bark, because of the property of the bitterness of the cinchona bark, cured malaria. He pondered, see, there are a lot of other bitter barks on this earth. Why only cinchona barks cures the malaria? He consumed around a small decoction of cinchona quinine. For his wonder, he developed chills and fevers and all the symptoms of malaria. And then he gave it to his friends, they also did. So after careful analysis, after going through all the meticulous inventions of science, the basic tenets of science, he underwent all that. Finally, he ended up with telling unalterable law of nature, which says similia similibus curenta. That means when a substance is capable of producing a symptom in a healthy individual, the same set of symptoms can be cured in the sick. For example, when you are cutting onion, you will get tears. A man who is not cutting onion, but he still gets tears. So we give a medicine made from an onion, Allium cepa. So this was the basic thing. From time immemorial, he invented this law. Homeopathy has been developed on that. Sir William Osler is the father of modern medicine. He is also a Nobel laureate who found out how to anastomose the arteries. He says, nobody has done good to medicine than Christian Frederick Samuel Hahnemann. That means his contribution to the system, to the suffering humanity, is something unimaginable. Homeopathy believes there are no two who are alike in health and there are no two who are alike in sickness.
So what is the scope of homeopathy today in our lives?
The ambit of homeopathy is as large as your life. In a common parlance, it can treat from a simple cold to the cancer. Though Hahnemann said there are no diseases, only diseased individuals.
So you mentioned some national institutes in the state and the country.
We have a lot of national institutes. We have one in Calcutta. We have 3 national institutes in Kerala. One is National Institute of Mental Health in Kottayam. Another is National Institute of Infertility in Homeopathy. Another, we have National Institute of Cancer. I must tell you, the Health Minister of Government of India in Lok Sabha recently very openly made a statement. Amongst all the Ayush system compared to even Ayurveda, Siddha and Unani, this time homeopathy has made 26% extra growth, 200 million people in India depending on homeopathy. This will tell you what homeopathy means to the common man of this country, because homeopathy is so economical. During COVID, we have given the homeopathic vaccine for 20 rupees.
So can you please share your contribution to the field of homeopathy?
I am Dr.B.T. Rudresh, who is practicing in Bangalore from last 40 years. We have seen almost from simple cold to cancers in my clinics. I was the second doctor in Karnataka who has been given a title known as Nadoja, which means Lokamanya. I was the second doctor. I am glad to say that I am one among the 2 in whole of the Karnataka. I was also been awarded as first awardee for the state award of Rajyotsava in 96 itself. I am the first until today is the last gold medal from the government of Karnataka. And I am also the honorary doctorate awardee from Kuvempu University. I was also heading the board of governors in the Central Council of Homeopathy at Delhi, taking care of the administrations of all the 250 colleges of in India. I was also the executive member of Central Council of Homeopathy. I was also the member of Knowledge Commission. Right now, I am the elected president of Karnataka Homeopathic System of Medicine. I have 2,000 photos of mother and child with me. As a doctor, when I see them, what homeopathy can do, I give all the credit to Hanuman on this day.
So what is the vision for homeopathy?
According to me, minus homeopathy, you can't achieve health for all goal. Number 1. In Karnataka, at least every panchayat must have a homeopathic dispensary. I think Kerala, we have more than 1,050 dispensaries. We have 3 national institutes. We have 10-bedded hospitals in all the taluks. Same thing in Tamil Nadu and Andhra. Same thing in UP. Same thing in Calcutta. I think we are lacking that in homeopathy in Karnataka.
Dr. Pallavi Wajapey is Head of Department of Pediatric Physiotherapy at RV College of Physiotherapy. She has received an international award for Outstanding Researcher in the field of physiotherapy in the year 2018 by RULA. Her areas of interest lie in early intervention, evidence-based physiotherapy practice, research and statistics. What is autism and what are the signs or symptoms that we can see in children and in adults?
Autism is a neurodevelopmental disorder. So it means there are going to be some problems during the developmental process. So it could either happen during the course of pregnancy when the baby is still in the mother's womb, and those are going to show up when the child grows little older. Older, I don't mean years. It could be months. The child could be 5 months, 6 months, 7 months when the parents can start noticing some signs and symptoms. Majorly, it is a social interaction, communication and behavior disorder. When I say social interaction, it means these children or adults are going to have problem with interacting with people. So they might have reduced eye contact. When that happens, people are not going to continue a conversation with them because it looks like they are not interested. They can have problem with facial expressions. So they can't read your expressions. Now when I look at you, you raise your eyebrow, I know you want me to continue. They will not understand why you did that. And even they will have a almost mask-like face. So you don't know whether they are understanding what you're saying, they're enjoying your conversation or they are not. And also what happens is they don't understand reciprocity. That means you ask a question and I answer. And then I wait. And then you ask another question and then I answer. So we are reciprocating. So they don't have that give and take. So all of this is a problem with social interaction. Now how do we identify that in babies? For a very young child, you play peekaboo. Right? The baby will laugh or coo, because they're understanding and it is play. So there is reciprocal. But this child may not enjoy that. They may not like being picked. So they don't like touch. So the child stays aloof and plays with toys all by himself. So this is where social interaction, you can understand about those things. It's a problem with communication. So either they develop language late or some of them may not develop language skills at all. So they might just babble, or they might coo, or they might hum. They might do those things to themselves. So they are not interacting with others. They're calming themselves down. They can have some stereotypical behavior which are repetitive in nature, like flapping hands. When they're excited or when they are sad, they might start running in circles. They might start observing parts of things rather than observing the whole picture. All of these are behavior issues. So that is why we say that it is a neurodevelopmental disorder. So they are behaving differently than a neurotypical child. Neurotypical would be somebody who fits into our norms. Sits at this month, stands at this month, walks at this month, interacts with other children, plays in groups. These children may sit, stand, walk at the proper age, but they may not be able to do the other things, that is social interaction, communication, behavior, understanding sensations, reciprocating to those sensations. So these things they will have a problem with.
When you talked about the symptoms, how do we respond to them in a way that is favorable to them?
Now, we are not programmed to understand why a child is flapping their hand, or why the child is running in circles, or why some child is throwing a tantrum. So as society, we look at that family as an outcast. You don't invite them to parties because that child is just extra burden. You have to first of all handle so many relatives, and then that child cries and throws a tantrum, and your program is all spoiled. So what happens is, we don't know how to deal with them. That is why we don't invite them, or those people are again left out. See, basically autism comes from auto-ism. Auto means within ourselves, like you have automatic. It starts by itself, it functions by itself. Like that, autism means within themselves. They are self-sustaining. They are within themselves. They're happy being that way. You put them in between a situation where there are too many people, where there is a lot of chaos. You take them to a shopping mall, multiple aisles filled with colors, lot of people, everybody making noise, people dashing, moving around. To them, it is sensory overload.
Okay.
They don't know what to do in that situation, and they might have a meltdown. The easiest thing for us to do is give them some space. Let them vent out. All behaviors may not be bad. You can find some quiet place for them. They like places which are dimly lit, less people around. That is why tents, tunnels, play areas where there are ball pools, all of these are calming zones for them. So they will go down, they'll vent out their frustration, they will calm down, and they'll come back as if nothing has happened.
Can a child with autism engage with others?
Child with autism can engage with others, but then again, like I told you, it is a social communication behavior disorder. So they will need a lot of help trying to engage. You would require a behavior therapist probably, or a special educator who can teach them and train them about what things can be done, how they can modulate the kind of sensation that they are receiving. When somebody talks to you with a hi and a hello, how you respond to that. So these things need to be taught to them, because they have kind of mask-like face. They're not very expressive. They might not have eye contact. So this might make the other person feel that, they don't want to interact with me. So all of these barriers have to be taken care of. Once that is done, they will find their own ways of interacting. So what therapists do is, we design programs in such a way that they can be group interaction. Initially, we'll have just one-on-one therapy sessions. Then you put two people together, and then you have a group. So these people who are like-minded, who have similar kind of interests, will start interacting with each other. And then we have pretend plays. We have role plays where, that child will be the therapist for the day, and everybody else will listen to that child. So they feel in charge. And when that happens, they open up and they start talking, and then they start conversing. High functioning autism especially can benefit a lot from this. High functioning autism can go to mainstream schools. Those with level 2 autism, where they have moderate retardation, they will need special schools. And those with level 3, wherein they have severe features and they are non-verbal, as in they cannot converse with you. Even through actions, they are having difficulty conversing. Those people may need to be homeschooled.
What is the role of society? How should we behave towards people with autism spectrum disorder?
Acceptance is the key. Awareness we are creating. April 2nd is World Autism Day. The entire April month is considered as Awareness Month. Awareness is basically knowing that something like this exists. Acceptance is letting them be a part of you, your society, your projects. There are still a lot of families where they will not accept a child with autism. The stigma with mental retardation will always stay. So it is our turn now to make sure that we understand. So learn to accept. Make sure that whenever you see there is a child who is having a meltdown, stop looking at that parent as if, you don't know how to manage your child. Give them some space. Let the child vent out. They'll be fine. After 10 minutes, you wouldn't even realize that this is the same child who was having a meltdown. So let them be. Find out how we can make the environment more suitable for everybody. Every mall can have a small space where you can let people just vent out. You have smoking zones. Why not have zones where you have tents and tunnels put up where, children who are having a hard time can just go and relax for some time. So getting those things should be good. See, autism is not a disease. It is not something that will spread on touch. So accept those children. They may not respond to you the first time you talk because they have a problem with social language communication and behavior. So give them another chance. Sooner or later, you'll realize that they can be good friends.
Dr. Sharada Srinivasan is an archaeologist specializing in the scientific study of art, archaeology, archaeometallurgy, and culture. She is associated as professor with the National Institute of Advanced Studies, Bangalore. She has made pioneering contributions in the scientific study of art, archaeology, and archaeometallurgy. She is an acclaimed performer of Bharatanatyam and has given numerous lecture demonstrations such as the artistic and scientific perspectives on the Nataraj bronze. In 2019, she received the Padma Shri.
Within our traditions, I guess these kinds of connections are probably quite intuitive. That is also one reason why I suppose I never felt a contradiction in that sense. I was also reminded of Purandaradasa, this beautiful Jagadodharana, Adi Sitala Yashoda, Ano Raniyana, Mahato Mahimana, which means that even in the grain of the sand, you see the cosmos when Yashoda asks the child Krishna to open the mouth in the Vishwarupam and so on. And, Aprameya, the formlessness. So the scientific abstraction that we deal with, which involves, let's say I was studying quantum mechanics at IIT, and there's a beauty in that scientific abstraction as well, so that undercurrent of philosophy which we have in our tradition, somehow that manages to, it's not a contradiction for me, so I see those holes sort of coming in seamlessly. But of course, with all this, I should say that, with the pursuits I've done, being an archaeologist and an archaeometallurgist on the one side, studying metal artifacts and, using very high, laboratory techniques and analysis, traveling, and then of course you said putting together dance, I should also say that I'm, very grateful for my family support. I've been very lucky that way also, that the people that I've been with have understood and helped to nurture my passions. And it is also from the Nilgiris. In fact, recently there's an Oscar also for the short film on the elephants from the nature camp in Mudumalai for Belly and Bowman. This couple, of course, they speak Tamil, but also Badaga. The beauty of the harmony with nature. I think that intuitive thing of connecting the external world with the internal world, the inner space and the outer space. And that is also what, for me, the beauty of having danced the whole Bharatanatyam tradition, having performed Nataraja in a way, as well as studied Nataraja, because that is the beauty that when you talk about the Panchabhuta, because we associate Shiva Nataraja with all the 5 elements, earth, wind, water, fire, and ultimately he's also worshipped as Akasha in Chidambaram, both as the formless and the anthropomorphic form. In my studies in archaeology and archaeometallurgy, I was also trying to understand the elemental composition using, spectrochemical analysis to actually analyze the composition, which was then we found to be leaded bronzes. I was also using this technique called lead isotope analysis, which is a way of tracing, let's say, the bronze metal to the ore source, because different artifacts, if they have lead from a particular source, then the isotopic signature of the source will still be reflected in the lead. So that way you can sort of try and group together the bronze artifacts to different groups. So then I was working here on analyzing bronzes during my PhD thesis at University of London, and I was able to show that, for example, the early Chola bronzes had a very distinct isotopic signature from the Vijayanagara bronzes, which helped to date and tell them apart. And interestingly, because we always attribute the Nataraja bronze to the 10th century Chola period, and is where it is celebrated, let's say, with the art, the Brihadishwara temple in Tanjavur and so on. But I found from the isotopic signatures that it actually seems that the Nataraja bronze was already formulated by the Pallava period, which is slightly earlier. I identified some Pallava pieces of the 8th century, both in the Chennai Museum and also in the Victor and Albert Museum, one of the pieces. And why that to me is very interesting, and as I said, it again comes back to the connections between science and art, is because it is during that period, 6th to 8th century period, that you have so many of the devotional hymns coming up, Tevaram hymns and so on. The art form thrived because of the hymns and the interest in creating those icons and the inspiration for the artists. So all of that comes together to create these very beautiful technical pieces. You also see that, for instance, in the poetry of Andal. She actually describes the process of casting these bronzes, the lost wax casting process, because if you go to Swami Mala, you still see how they are made. They are first made with wax and then covered with layers of clay to form the mold, and then it is heated and the wax is expelled. Andal's writing, she says, Ulle ulle melugu uruki vengadam utra. She's already talking about the process of melting out of the wax from the mold, and she's comparing that to rain cloud. She wants them to rain on Lord Vishnu, who she worships through the bhakti poetry. So many nuances of the metaphysical connections. So there was a reinforcement for me that yes, I enjoyed the science of it, but in a way the scientific finding that the Natarajas of Pallava bronze brought me back to my interest in poetry and, let's say the bhakti poetry and the dance and the devotional, so it is a kind of cyclic thing. For me, satisfaction of doing, let's say, a dance performance very well, and the way you feel the elation. And for instance, I've danced in the Brihadishwara temple. That quality of the relation, for me, if I write a scientific paper and I've, shown something and uncovered something, that satisfaction is just as extraordinary. For instance, one of the major studies that we did was on the early steel making tradition, and the fact that even Karnataka and other parts of South India, Tamil Nadu and Andhra Pradesh, there was very sophisticated early steel being made, iron and steel. Of course, we know the Delhi Iron Pillar, which is such a wonderful artifact. But there again, you see, it is made very sophisticatedly of wrought iron, but ultimately it's also a very beautiful aesthetic creation, so cylindrically tapered. So this connection between, of course, art and science. But this steel making tradition, of course, was very important because this ukku, as it was called, was a high-grade steel. It was probably the earliest high-grade steel being made. And so many of these ingots were being transported from South India to other parts of the world, to West Asia, to Persia, and the Arab world and Damascus and so on, to make these fabled swords, which had a very distinctive alternating pattern, which was due to the forged ingot of this particular microstructure. So some of our work was in establishing that process and where the production sites and the antiquity. So that gives a very similar kind of satisfaction, maybe as an artistic creation, even at the end of it, when your scientific intuitions and your scientific hypotheses and everything are ratified. And I think the beauty of seeing a microstructure is just as much as, let's say, the end product of Bharatanatyam performance. And that's what Cyril Stanley Smith, who was in a way the father of archaeometallurgy, he talked about this process of how, the amazing thing is every metal artifact has what we call a microstructure, a kind of like a blueprint of how it was made, and with all the phases and so on, which tell you the proportion in which metals have mixed from just looking at that microstructure. And of course, the preparation of it is an art. As you say, it's an art and a science as well. The dendritic structure will tell you that it's been cast, but if it has, slip lines, it'll tell you it's been forged. So this is the beauty that, and that's what for me is also the magic and the challenge of being a material scientist, that every artifact can tell you so much. What is the common aspect across cultures, and how does the international exposure contribute? Of course, the recognition matters in these kind of niche areas because this is not like the usual areas. It is very thrilling, for me as a woman, or to see subjects like archaeology and all, which are off the beaten track, to get the kind of support. But what is very satisfying, the museum is also a place to learn and to educate. And it is very important also for the cognitive development of a child. It's not just about in the remote past, but it also tells you how early humans tried to master their environment, tried to adapt, tried to learn. So all of those creative processes, and from that we can also learn some lessons for our contemporary times and the future and so on. And what is interesting, of course, the commonalities are interesting and the differences are also interesting, because in a way, the story of metals is also the story of civilization. As man's, say, cognitive and other abilities developed, so did his ability to master more and more metals and elements and alloys and all that. So if you see the ways in which even the metals were discovered, the early metals that they used, like gold and silver, are noble metals, so they're just found in the native state, and because of the shiny color and so on, they could have been probably found easily. And so, of course, early man went from using stone tools to more complex things like you have the Bronze Age and the Iron Age, going from, let's say, Copper Age to Bronze Age to Iron Age, going from elements that were more easy to extract, which didn't need very high temperatures for extraction from the ore to the metal. And then bronze involves next level of complexity of alloying and so on, but it gives a harder product because at copper, which was very soft and didn't make such a good tool, when you alloy the tin, it becomes harder, so it can make a better tool. And then, of course, iron is a little more difficult also to smelt because, again, it's a higher temperature process. So that comes later in the progression of mankind. So that was, again, used for making harder cutting tools and such like. So, and you see that some of these stages are found in different parts of the world. To some extent, there are the commonalities, but the differences are also interesting. Like if you look at South America, for instance, they never went into an Iron Age, maybe because of the fact that breath had a lot of symbolism. So they didn't actually, use bellows and they didn't do iron smelting and so on. But you have really fabulous artifacts amongst the Incas and all that where they used very unusual alloys like gold silver alloys, and they also used a metal that was never used in any other part of the world, platinum, because of the fact that it was more easily available there. So it's also a story of the resources and how humankind adapted to those uses. So I think it's very important to look at the global perspective because that gives us so many lessons. I think if you just look at it in isolation as only, this culture and, this had all the answers, I think we really miss out a lot on learning so much of the global perspective. And of course, the reasons as to why the Industrial Revolution happened in the West. I mean, one thing that you do see, I talked about, of course, the skills in smelting zinc, which probably was mastered earlier in India by the 16th century. But around the same time, already in Europe, the use of so much more mechanization is seen. Whereas here you find, if you look at the early accounts of mining and all, it's still very much dependent on the manual labor or animal labor. But you see the kinds of contraptions and things like that, the agricola and so on, for metallurgical processes and so on. The mechanization really is what it removed the toil of human labor and all that, which was much more a mark of the pre-industrial society. So with that ability to remove the physical toil, that was a huge, step which gave so much of advantages towards mass production and so on in the Industrial Revolution. And we're also benefiting so much from the fact that we don't have to do that much of drudgery, of the physical drudgery and all the rest of it. So that is also what is the beauty of science, that you're always looking for a solution towards the betterment of humankind. And that is what we should all really remember and hang on to, because that's why we need the scientific temper, because scientific temper and development is also about bettering humankind, making society and humanity a better place for all beings and all creatures, all of the ecosystem and so on.
And now, here's a quick mention of notable scientists born in the month of April. Carl Friedrich Gauss, born on 30th of April 1777, is remembered for having written an entire book on number theory at the age of 21. He was a noted mathematician, physicist, astronomer, and writer. Leonardo da Vinci, born on 15th April 1452, is remembered for several of his remarkable masterpieces, to name a few: The Last Supper, Mona Lisa. Several important days are being observed in the month of April. 1st to 7th of April was observed as Prevention of Blindness Week. 22nd April, World Earth Day. You were with us in Radioscope, the National Science Magazine program. We hope you had a pleasant time with us. Script, narration and production by Rosalind Matthew. This was a presentation of All India Radio, Bengaluru.